Thing you probably know a little something about something called the BC Vision, and maybe you've even been participating in it. Jennifer Bowman and Dillon Davis at the Battle Creek Enquirer have been covering it as an important deadline is coming up soon, and they're here to talk about it today. Good morning to both of you.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for the time today. So let's, in case somebody has been in Tahiti for the last year, what is the BC Vision?
Yeah, it is likely that you have participated in this. They've talked
Yeah.
about surveying thousands of residents. And so BC Vision is really this ambitious initiative by almost every sector you can think about, the private sector, nonprofits, government. And it's been kind of spearheaded by both the Kellogg Company and the W.K. Kellogg Foundation. And it's really to tackle, the city's biggest issues. So while they're not unique, they'd like to do things as far as workforce development, economic development, a culture of vitality, having a cool town, and really get at the heart of some of the issues that have really plagued the city for years now.
Mm-hmm. And there is a deadline that was associated with that. Obviously, we can laugh about sometimes in our own jobs, meetings about meetings about meetings, and some people grouse about meetings, and nothing ever gets done. Are we getting something done here?
I think the big part of the first 100 days was really mobilizing the people. I mean, we were talking about this with people that are involved in BC Vision, and I was talking about commenters that I know will be on our Facebook. They'll be like, "Well, what did they do?"
Mm-hmm.
A lot of what I'm hearing is, "Well, look, we got these big people together. You got the Chamber of Commerce and Denso and Kellogg and WK Kellogg Foundation. You get them all in the same room, and you can start talking." In a way that a lot of these people will admit that they haven't been able to talk like this before.
Interesting.
So yeah, that 100-day mark is October 14th.
Yeah.
And what you're supposed to see is these action plans. So they've broken out into these action teams, and what started as this huge umbrella of the biggest problems in the city, they've kind of trickled down into these teams and try to tackle that. And so what we are expected to see, and this is what they set the 100-day deadline, is to have these plans in place, what they identify as who should be partnering, the biggest issues, and how to make that that point happen.
Well, they say the easiest way to get something done or solve a problem is to figure out what it is first, and then try to figure out how to solve it once you've admitted you have it and figure out what it's all about.
Sure.
Sounds like we're headed in that direction, right?
It does sound that way. I mean, they've identified a lot of things. I mean, as Jennifer said, there's from downtown development to trying to bring businesses in, to retain businesses, to kindergarten readiness. Like, there's just a ton of things that they'd like to address, and they've kind of broken them up into their action plans, with
Right.
key actions as to how to accomplish them, and so I think we'll see that as
certainly.
I mean,
it's a 1 to 3 year plan that these action teams are coming up with. So yeah, we're not going to see utopia within 100 days. I don't think that's realistic, but there are definitely some obstacles and some work that this initiative has to do, especially these are huge issues.
Yeah.
They aren't solved overnight. So. And
we'll talk about what they are and how the heck do you prioritize all that. We'll discuss that coming up. WBCK, Jennifer Bowman and Dillon Davis here from the Battle Creek Enquirer. We're talking about the BC Vision, which reaches a threshold next month, a 100-day mark at which we move forward. You can't get something done without setting a deadline. I say this all the time. Nothing like a deadline. Sometimes we don't get to work until 10 seconds before the deadline, but, at least the deadline motivates us, right? So we had to have that, didn't we?
Yeah.
So what happens at the 100-day mark?
Well, the 100-day, they're going to have a celebration at Festival Market Square just to kind of celebrate where they are and take a look at where they're headed.
Mm-hmm.
There's an opportunity, I think, to network and kind of tell the community, look, here's where we're at. And, because I think there's a lot of general consciousness. I don't think the people really know what's going on. I think, there's the people that attend the meetings and there's the people that are in the discussion and, but I think, I think they need to try to get more people involved, and I think that's what they're trying to do with that particular event.
Yeah, while I find it important that when you hit that 100-day mark that you're set for yourself and you supposed to unveil these action plans, and that's great. You should also celebrate that. That's a milestone in a 3-year plan. But, I mean, the way that we want to approach our coverage, at least at BC Vision, is, it's coverage that's been tossed around a few reporters at the Enquirer, and so our coverage has largely been their events, their celebrations,
Sure.
their press releases, and this is an initiative that, is very large scale, and they really emphasize looking at every issue through a lens of racial equity. And they say that's different from the past initiatives, but there have been initiatives after initiatives, from what I hear, it's before my time, obviously, but that this town has a lot of do-gooders who want to tackle some of the biggest issues, and some of those never come to fruition, or they run out of funding. And so we'd really like to take a watchdog perspective on this to be as objective as we can. And we can look at the celebrations and look at what they've unveiled as action plans, but it's our intention to look at the process. How many people are they including? Are they including all these different sectors of people who may not often be touched when it comes to these surveying, when they're trying to find out the issues?
Right.
And these are undoubtedly, these are challenges that they're going to have to cross. You can't grow our workforce and our skilled workforce by a certain percentage by just, snapping your fingers. So this is going to take work. It's going to take collaboration, partnerships, and we think it's important that there's some watchdog kind of looking at all that.
Sounds reasonable. So do we know yet what they've unveiled or what they've discovered as the major challenges that they're going to undertake?
Yeah, they've looked at pillars, and so I'm blanking right now at the top of my head, but in general, the things they want to look at is
kindergarten readiness.
Kindergarten readiness. Yeah, their action teams are kindergarten readiness,
small and large business.
Yeah, culture of vitality. And workforce development, I believe, is in there too. So they've broken down all these things, and what they're finding now as they do these early drafts of action plans, or so I've been told, is that they are seeing where they connect. You may have a strategy in some kind of small business task force about how you want to do this, but it might also tie into some goal that the culture of vitality team saw, because so many of these issues are, connected. So
they had a set of boards they were hanging up at different meetings last week, and they had a meeting on Monday where members of one of the action teams, the steering committee, they were putting stickers on the ones where they felt like they aligned together, so they could maybe try to make some connections. And again, like I said before, I think that's where a lot of the wins early on have been, that they're happy to get a lot of these people in the same space and talking the same language, where I think a lot of the time they weren't having that talk before. I mean, I think it's very difficult to, merge all these sort of things.
Well, right. I was about to say that, too, that when you have something as vast as this initiative is, trying to get everybody coordinated can be a little bit difficult. But as you have covered this and as you have listened to people in the community react to it, what's been the response that you've heard? Has it been favorable, or has it been some folks saying, here we go again? What have you heard?
Certainly from the people involved, we have definitely heard a sense of optimism, maybe a desire for more time to get things done, of course. I mean, you're tackling, again, these issues. But a lot of people are skeptical, I think, at least if you look at our online comments when we write about it. There's a lot of questions of, well, how the heck are they going to do this in 100 days? Or, what's the difference? And we have heard some criticism about the timing of it. This was something that was first laid out without the name BC Vision as an economic development plan, and it was right after the Kellogg Company received backlash for sending jobs to Grand Rapids.
Right.
So the timing has always raised eyebrows, I think, for a lot of people in the community.
We're talking with Jennifer Bowman and Dillon Davis, Battle Creek Enquirer, about BC Vision. We'll continue in a moment on WBCK. Tuesday, Jennifer Bowman and Dillon Davis covering the BC Vision story for the Battle Creek Enquirer. So 100 days, big party, and we pick up all the streamers and balloons, and then what happens?
I think after that, there's an opportunity to look at some of the things that they've identified in their action plans, and then I think they're going to try to implement some of these things. I mean, with that comes, who's going to lead the efforts, and who's going to see it through, how it's going to get paid for. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that need to happen after that 100-day, but like I said before, they've laid it out into a year 1, year 2, and year 3 sort of thing. So I think they're thinking long term, and that's something that we tried to cover, through the process, is just try to keep it in perspective that 100 days is, not the end of the process.
So right now, the Kellogg Foundation, just last week, sent out some requests looking for some organizations who can handle some of these things that, come fall, when you've already put these plans out and told people what you'd like to tackle. As far as, I think they want to put an emphasis on not only communications, but accountability, transparency. It looks like there's going to be a lot of data monitoring and an effort by the BC Vision to put this data out for residents to understand. So in an easy packaged way, to kind of look at, what they've collected as far as the research, because they're not just pulling these out of thin air and not really just even from, conversations. They've looked at the data and there's, some hard numbers that they'd like to achieve with this initiative. But I think that they want to be able to be held accountable. I mean, that's the way they can prove that this is an effective initiative, right? So looking at firms that can handle data monitoring, communications, community outreach, and still this focus on racial equity, because that seems to be a huge component of this initiative.
One thing I've seen, too, is that it feels like BC Vision doesn't entirely know what it is that's going to be yet. I mean, we've had times where we try to reach out and they know who's the point of contact here, and they'll say, well, it's the Kellogg Foundation. And then you call them, and it's like, well, you got to contact the steering committee for that. And it's like there's not a point of contact here. So I think right now I don't know that they entirely know what they're going to be. I think that it's a very much an evolving process, and I think putting out the feelers like they have maybe as a step in a direction they'd like to go in.
Well, and that sounds like that is to be expected, I suppose, at this point. Somebody's listening to this, though, who's driving along or walking down the street, and all they know is they need an affordable place to live or a better paying job or a better school or something like this, something that practical that affects their lives, and they're hearing things like workplace development and culture and vitality, and they're saying, yeah, that sounds nice, but I don't know what that is.
Right.
Is it fair to say that those connections are being made? That is to say, someone who has those practical concerns will see some attention given to those in this process.
Yeah, I think that's a challenge right now, because if you go to these meetings, it's very much classroom. We've got these big old posters, and you guys have Post-its, and you get to have like these, cheery little talks, and maybe they're tough at times, but how does that translate to the guy who's like, hey, I want my house to be worth something, and I want, my school district to not be in a deficit next year, and things like that. I will say in discussions that we've had with people is that they are looking at practical concerns. They're looking at, things like, I work third shift, how do I get daycare? Things like that they're trying to find connections. And so while it very much focuses on this big idea, they have tried to narrow down their focus. But the pressure's on. They're really going to have to prove to the everyday person, because if you look at the people in the room right now, certainly they can tout how many people they've surveyed, how many people that they, get involved. But you go to a meeting, I've only been here for 3 years in the community. I don't need a cheat sheet to identify who's there. It's very much people who are there because the title on their business card conveys the fact that they're community leaders and they've been involved in this type of community conversation and nonprofit work, and how they can make that connection to the average resident, which I think they're making an effort to do, to be fair. But that I think is a challenge for BC Vision.
I tell you, Richard, I look at my dad kind of as the barometer. Like we've talked before that I'm from Battle Creek, and my dad's worked for about 30 years here in town, and I talk to him about BC Vision sometimes, and his eyes just gloss over. He's just like, I don't know what the hell that is. Like I feel like, how does this affect me at all?
Well, I wonder about that. Yeah.
So I think it's trying to prove its worthiness to people, like my dad, who has a middle class life, and just trying to figure out how can my house be worth more? How can I make sure that my daughter has a good school to go to? I think there's the questions that still need to be answered.
And I suppose time will tell. But your point is that with any of these things, it starts big and then it trickles down. And it sounds like, from what you've seen, they're aware of that.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how this sorts out. Now, what's the next step in the coverage that you're doing? You recently had a 100-day deadline looming sort of story.
Yeah, we certainly will still, because I think there's still a lot of people who don't know what that 100-day mark really is going to bring. So, like I said, we are planning on doing what we hope is a series of coverage, and we'd like to be watchdog about it. We'd like to celebrate their achievements, but we're going to be objective about it. We're going to be skeptical about it, and we have a lot of what we think is worthwhile coverage into issues of transparency, issue of communications, looking at the issues they're trying to tackle, and trying to help our readers understand just how severe, these biggest downfalls of the city really are for them. And just trying to have people understand that this, this big old BC Vision that is, celebrated by some of the big players in the community is something that's, intended to target the average, resident of Battle Creek. So
Okay.
Yeah, part of the Battle Creek Enquirer is, kind of their mantra is about we want a good community, we want to improve the community, but I think there's a point where we are not also partners in it. We need to
Right.
be able to take a step back and look from the center. This
Examine
is
it.
what it looks like, and this
Yep.
is what it could be, and I think that's what we're trying to do. We're going to try to roll out a series of stories that will
something
convey
that's
that.
something I think is vital to actually making BC Vision successful.
All right, and it's easy enough to find Jennifer and Dylan. Your emails and other contact info are right on your stories, and so folks can tell you what they want to see
Yeah.
from this and the questions they have, and you can be fiduciaries of that. I'm sure.
Absolutely. Welcome
All
it.
right. All right. Thanks to the both of you. We'll
Thank
be
you.
Thanks for
watching
sharing.
and reading. We'll stay in touch.